Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first in our series where we'll be meeting with top CEOs from local listed companies. Today, we have the pleasure of having with us Mr. Radi-Abd-El-Haj, CEO of RS2 Group. Radi, thank you very much. Welcome to Kalmata Kushkiri, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ellen. Pleasure to be here, and I'm honored to have this interview with you.
Thank you. RS2, as most people know, is a fintech company with a strong presence in Malta, but especially internationally. It's been very successful in the international markets. It's been listed on the Malta Stock Exchange for over a decade, and it's the fourth largest company on the Malta Stock Exchange with a market cap of over 400 million. So let's jump right in. First of all, can you give us a summary for people who might not know what RS2 does and its core activities?
Sure. As you said, we are a fintech company. We have been on, I would say, in Malta at least for the last 30 years. We have been extremely successful in the banking community. We have been offering our services and products for banks and payment service providers. Over the years, we have expanded our offering and diversified our business. Now, RS2 today is having three business lines. One is the licensing business. The second one is the managed services or the outsourcing business. And the third one, of course, the acquiring business. Licensing business means that companies like Barclays and other big, large clients or large banks, they get a right of the license in order to use the system so they can process their payment business internally. The second one is the outsourcing business, where customer comes to us. They outsource their business to us, and we run the entire operation for them from onboarding of cardholder, merchant, up to statementing. And the third one, of course, the minute we have our own financial institution license, we'll be able to offer them business directly to merchants, but working with our partners, being a bank or a financial institution, using their relationship with the card schemes and alternative payment methods in order to provide the services to the customer globally.
So out of these three that you mentioned, which one is the core or the main business at the moment, the main revenue driver?
So what we are, our strategy is always clear, and I think that we have been mentioning that always, that we have one, I would say, plan, which is plan A. We never had a plan B. So if we don't believe in plan A, we will always have plan B. That's why we never had plan A. And the business going forward, we will be focusing mainly on two business lines. One is the outsourcing business, and the second one will be then the servicing of the merchant and the cardholder directly. And the reason for that is that we don't want to have competition on the market using our own platform. So we are being selective when it's come to the licensing business. So we will continue to offer licensing to, I would say, a client who really doesn't compete with us, or they are in the different regions where we don't want to offer certain services. But our main focus or our main revenue stream will be the outsourcing business and the acquiring and the issuing business.
So when you say acquiring, for example, I have a website, an e-commerce website, and I want to accept payments through that website, like a payment gateway.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Excellent. Okay, great. So let's go on to the second question. Last year, RS2 announced that it concluded a major agreement with one of the largest acquirers in the US for a 10-year term. Can you provide us with an update on this? Is it in motion?
So yes, it's actually one of the top three acquirer in the United States. It's an international bank, very respected customer as well. In the United States, they are dealing with multinational merchants. We started the business with them last year. They are already live on the platform. We built for them their own cloud in the United States, and it's really something to appreciate in the industry, because today, if you see, for example, giants in our business, they're still on a traditional hardware, while RS2 and our customer, for example, they are today on the cloud. And they started their business in the US, and the plan is to go out with them as well into the international markets, and they are targeting over 27 markets internationally.
with your system.
Yeah.
Very good. And so you just, I'm going to skip a bit because it's an interesting, you mentioned that it's a cloud-based system. So basically there's no installation.
Correct. So in the old days, when we started our second business line, which is the outsourcing business, we used to have our traditional data center in Madrid with the disaster recovery in Frankfurt. Now, that was a little bit, I would say, costly. So not only costly, but also in terms of performance and scalability, it was a little bit cumbersome, because you need to advise them 6 or 7 weeks in advance if you have a new customer with large volumes to increase their capacity, etc. We managed to go on the cloud really in a very short period of time, and we have a great colleagues who managed to get us at that stage. The beauty of the cloud is that we managed to really reduce the costs in terms of data center of 50%. But the upside with it as well is that we are able to today to onboard any type of client, irrespective what type of business they have or the size of the business, etc., in no time, without informing the cloud that we have now, or we need to process over 100 million, let's say 100 million or even 1 billion transactions more than what we have today. And that this is the scalability which the clouds give you, because you don't need to inform them. They have sort of a business intelligence. So the minute they see that the size of the business or the number of transactions are really increasing, they just expand the bandwidth
So for the
for
tech
the processing.
enthusiasts out there, it's something like Azure.
So today we are running on Amazon Cloud, and for the customer in the United States, for example, their preference was Azure, and we implemented Azure for them. So today within the group, we have the experience of implementing Amazon Cloud as well as Azure.
Very interesting. Just to conclude on the US client that you onboarded, do you have any further potential large clients in the pipeline?
We have at least 2 or 3 clients in the pipeline today, which are by far even much bigger than the one which we have in the United States. And they are coming mainly from Asia Pacific, and there are others in the United States as well. And I want to emphasize one thing as well. Our core business in the United States, when I say core business, is the business to directly get engaged with clients to be processed on our managed services business, is by far much larger than even the opportunity with that client which we have in the United States.
Very interesting. So on a number of occasions, you also publicly mentioned that the company has applied for a financial institution license, I believe, an EMI, in Germany. What are the new capabilities? First of all, why are you applying? So what capabilities? And is it a B2B or a B2C service?
So the reason for us applying in Germany is, first of all, the reputation of having a license in Germany through the BaFin. The other thing is, if we see the customer we will be dealing with in the very near future, it's quite large, which we need to show certain credibility in our license. And the other thing is, having a license, we have been always, so when we look into securing a sponsorship, for example, going to one of our partner banks or our customer and trying to use their license in order to acquire businesses directly, the question was always arising that we give you the sponsorship, but we are not interested really of administrating your business, settling your merchants and your cardholder, etc. So you need to make sure that you are having the license or deal with the funding, etc. That's the only reason why we are getting the financial institution license.
And what's the reason for Germany in particular, the
And
jurisdiction?
because of the reputation of the BaFin. So it's different than having, for example, we are a Maltese company, by the way, but still, it's to have a license granted by the BaFin is different than having something which is granted by the MFSA or by the FCA in London, etc. So we decided to go that path, and that has created a lot of credibility in the group having a license within the BaFin. The other thing is that we would like to offer services, which I think the EMI through the BaFin in Germany will give us that option. So today, if you look into the market, it's really fragmented. You have fintech who are offering pure consumer services. You have other fintech that are focusing on the merchant or on the businesses. Within the EMI license, I think we will be the first one who's really combining both services together. So on the same platform, we will be able to offer the consumer business, and we will be able also to offer the business. So having that ecosystem on the same platform, it's really unique today, and you don't have anyone offering this. Just for the audience to understand what I mean, everyone knows in 26 in Germany, everyone knows Revolut, everyone knows Adyen, etc. So what we are doing, we are putting all these guys on the same platform to be managed by our own EMI. And for that, we will be offering a combination of acquiring business or merchant businesses. Will be issuing products for consumers, but in the same times, we will be having also a banking services, which we have today, or let's put it that way, we have the capability to offer that, but because we don't have the license, we are not able to offer that.
Certainly.
And the reason for that is that our platform or Bankworks was built from day one as a core banking application. That's why we are able to manage current accounts, we are able to manage deposits, installment, loans, we are able to calculate interest, all this stuff, things. We have our own FX module where we are able to offer, for example, traveling cards with multiple currencies. We are able to convert all that. We were not utilizing these capabilities because we don't have the license in order to manage that fund. But today, or let's put it that way, once we have the financial institution license, we will be able to offer that. And keep in mind, that's not something which will be offered locally. We are able to offer that globally as well. And that's the unique proposition of Bankworks today. So it's the platform, it's really global platform, and we are dealing with all that business in a one single platform. So today, if I have, and that's one of the uniquenesses of the platform, is that within the same platform, you are able to satisfy the businesses, the merchant, acquiring business, etc. As well.
Can you be a bit more maybe specific about when you say, for example, the B2C? And so there are two things. One, you're saying, for example, N26, you would seek to onboard someone like N26 as your client, for example?
We have the capability in the system today to manage business or to manage client that N20, N26, Revolut, Monzo, etc. are managing. At the same time, we are able also to manage businesses like what Adyen is
so you'd have the same capability as them, you're saying?
Exactly. But we were not utilizing that type of business because we don't have the license, the financial license to do that.
Yes, I understand. So you'll consider in the future also having sort of a more retail offering rather than...
I think we will be the first one really to combine that business together as a fintech versus what the banks, the traditional bank today are offering on their legacy platform. But it will be in a fintech environment.
So one last question on the subject. So you could actually compete with such offerings, or it's a totally different business?
It will be even more and above of that because they are offering one part of the business, not all of it. So they are targeting really non-consumer. And today, if you see, for example, the consumer business, it's quite expensive because most of their money is really going to Google advertisement, to Facebook advertisement, etc. So we will be able to deal with both of it in one single environment, and our focus will be, of course, on the on the businesses, but you will have the consumer with it as it, because let's face it, you start actually with the businesses or with the merchant business, because within the merchant business you will know what type of customer or what type of consumers are shopping at that customer. And with the data intelligence which we have and the machine learning, etc., we will be able to identify these type of consumer. So really we can approach them directly without going through the heavy advertisement and the heavy spending on social media advertisement on Google, Facebook in order to acquire these customers. Because through the business, like a merchant, for example, if you are shopping on Amazon or you are shopping on any type of merchants, we will be able to identify who are these card holders through our artificial intelligence, which will give us the opportunity then to approach these customers in order to offer them certain services. Like, for example, loyalty programs, you can give them a nice cards in order to shop on the merchants. We can put an ecosystem where a consumer can store, for example, their preference merchant on their profile, which is created by us, in order to make their shopping experience seamless. So if, for example, if you have an account, a virtual account, or you have a card from us, you are able as a customer or a consumer to set up, for example, your preference merchant. If you would like to shop on Amazon, if you would like to shop on certain businesses like, I don't know, Scott, supermarkets, etc. So we are able to tokenize your shipping address, and we are able to tokenize as well your
Because
payment.
you have a relationship with the merchant as well.
Exactly, because you have both of them on the same ecosystem. Through
you.
one click, for example, you will be able to to perform a transaction and get the shipping done. And what we are planning also to do through our AMI is to create a full chain of events. So you will be able, the minute you order something on your merchants, we will trigger, for example, a request to a shipping company that pick up your goods and bring it to your home. And that's what we are trying to achieve with the E01.
Very, very, very interesting. Okay, so let's move on because I could just keep on going on that one. In terms of the share price, this was one of our Facebook investment community, a question that came up. So basically, we know, and I think a lot of people, especially more knowledgeable investors, recognize that there is potential in the company and that it's a growth story and so on. But people are wondering maybe how come the share price hasn't recovered post-COVID like maybe other fintechs have done. Like if you had to say, you mentioned Adyen before. Adyen's share price has been more positive since COVID, has recovered.
So one thing which we need to explain here is that our business model today is different than the acquirer. And the reason being is, if you see the business model of RS2 today, we are an outsourcing. So customer being bank, service provider, etc., they are outsourcing their business to us. The revenue model, it's completely different than the rest of the acquiring business. What do I mean by that? In our case, we are not sharing a percentage of the transaction. As an example, if someone is doing a transaction of 100 euros, an acquirer like Adyen, like for example Barclays, like Deutsche Bank, etc., they get a percentage of that transaction, which vary based on the type of cards was used in order to perform that transaction. And it's usually ranging between 0.3 to 2.8, 2.5, depend on the type of cards, credit cards you are using. And that's substantial. So if, for example, in the worst case scenario, you will be, or the best case scenario, you will be having out of the 100 euros, like, for example, 2.8 euros in services
As a merchant,
as an acquirer, as a bank.
yeah.
Exactly. In our case, irrespective how large the ticket size is, we charge a fixed fee based on our arrangement with our customer. So if the customer is doing 100 euros or doing 1,000 euros, we don't care about it. We consider that as one single transaction. And for that, based on the size of the transaction, we charge, based on the size of the volumes. If the customer is giving us 100 million transaction or 1 billion transaction, we charge between 0.01 up to, for example, 6 or 7 cents per transaction. So that's the difference in the business model.
And over there, the client is the merchant.
The client is the merchant. So the minute we have our own license, we will be able to charge a percentage from the transaction rather than having a fixed fee, which is ranging between 1 cent up to 7 cents of the transaction.
Fair enough. Because you're taking also the place, you're taking the place of the bank there as well.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Got you. Okay, very interesting. So basically, so the answer to that question in terms of the share price is that once this plan gets executed, you expect it to recover, to be reflected eventually.
It will be a completely different model. Let me give you an example. If you have a customer who's doing 100 million euros, okay? If I want to, or let's say 150 million euros in volumes, okay, on a yearly basis. If I am doing only processing for them, I will be charging them in an average 250,000 euro a year. If I'm acquiring that type of business, I will be able to charge them over 3 million euros a year. So just to see the ratio between a processor, being a processor, or being an acquirer. So that will change the entire dynamic of the business.
Understood, and makes a lot of sense in my opinion. Okay, so moving on, one of the most important achievements for RS2, as many know, was the collaboration with Barclays Bank that originally started off as a client and then ended up being a shareholder. How important would you say this milestone was for the company's growth?
Extremely well. I mean, if you see the type of businesses we won after boarding Barclays or having Barclays as a customer, that increase, of course, not only the awareness in the market of RS2, having a customer like Barclays, but also the credibility in the banking community. And that's why we managed, for example, to get so much businesses after Barclays, which are substantial to the company and contributed into the growth which we have today, and also which we will be having in the future. And even for the financial institution license, which we applied in Germany, I think having Barclays as a shareholders in the company, they gave a lot of, I would say, credibility for the application.
Excellent. You recently acquired the company called Calicom. How will this benefit you?
So Calicom, we have that company which will serve two purposes. One is for the outsourcing business or the managed services business that will give us or will have the know-how in-house in order to implement POSs, the point of sales at the merchant side. In the same time, we'll be able also to accelerate our growth once we have our own license in order to provide or to have already an existing merchant base, which we can start our growth in our financial business.
Thank you. So RS2 has grown its presence substantially. I know this personally. I've seen also RS2 being represented at one of the largest, if not the largest, fintech conference, and a very strong presence there, alongside or if not bigger than certain banks. So I was wondering as well, where do you see the company broadly, sort of, where do you see the company going in 5 years' time? As a first question. And as a second question, given the company's prominence and the company's presence, would you consider in the future a dual listing?
So I think we will be, or I would say we will make Malta proud of RS2 to be the first company. First of all, we are international company. So today we have presence in Latin America, in Asia Pacific with our own offices. In Asia Pacific, in Latin America, in the United States, in Europe, we have three locations in Germany, one in Malta, one in Gozo. We have in the Middle East. So that's one thing, and I think I'm as a major shareholder of this company, I'm targeting to have the company within the next 2 to 3 years, 3 years to 5 years even, to become a couple of billions. And I'm not talking about 1 billion, I'm talking a couple of billions. And I think with the size of the business we have today and the type of customer we have today, we should be able to manage and do that. And what we are really targeting is, and I think our focus now is really to raise the funding through the preference shares in order to accelerate our growth. And in case we really raise the 50 million euros, which we are targeting to do, I think we will be able to, based on the current situation today and the type of business today, to accelerate the growth of the company. That my target is in the next, I would say 1 to 2 year max, to have either a spec or to go into a secondary listing, and I'm targeting either doing that on the Nasdaq based on the size of the business which we have currently in the United States, or to do something in Germany. So yes, I'm targeting within the next 2 to 3 years at latest to have a secondary listing on an international market.
Very interesting. You mentioned the US. The US is attractive. Does the fact that the interchange on the US work very differently to Europe make it an attractive market, or does?
Absolutely. Because today, if you see, for example, the valuation of fintech, like if RS2 today would be in the US, it will have a completely different valuation. Because you need to consider one thing, that we are owning our own technology, and technology today is the gold in the industry. So we can really control our destiny, what we would like to do, what type of business model we would like to have with customer, etc. So United States, I think, look into companies like RS2 and completely different than what we have in Europe. And the valuation of the company, being a US company, for example, it's a completely different game.
Understood. Finally, the final question on a lighter note. Obviously, being in fintech, being in payments, I can't not ask you, where do you think sort of cash is going? Up till pre-COVID, cash was heavily used, even especially in Malta, definitely. Where do you think I think now people have changed, that has changed. And sort of, where do you think cash payments will be in 5 to 10 years' time?
I think not only in 5 to 10 years' time, cash will continue to be there and will stay there. And the reason being is that you need to, the issue is you cannot look into things globally when it's come to cash. So it's really depend on on countries, in geographies, etc. So today you still have countries which are almost 100% cashless, and countries which are 70, 80% still cash community.
Well, let's talk about Europe, for example.
As an example, I live in Germany and I know how the German works. We have almost 60% of the payments in Germany is cash. So you have a lot of, and again, we need to appreciate as well that cash means privacy. So not everyone today is paying with cards or exposed to a different payment method, etc. So cash will continue to be a payment method. So it will not vanish, and it will vanish within 50 years. It will not be during my time. So I doubt that cash will be really disappearing completely from the market. And if you see, for example, it might be converted into, instead of paper, you will have digital currencies, but it will continue to be sort of a cash in our hands.
Understood. Thank you very much for a very interesting session. I hope we managed to provide some value to our users, so I hope you found it interesting. If you're interested in keeping in touch, please follow our Facebook page and our investment community, where I hope to be adding and organizing more of these interviews on a more frequent basis. Thank you very much and good night.